Hi and welcome to Four Wheels Good, your weekly motoring programme on air throughout the year. Well, this week we welcome back Stirling Moss, who'll be a regular guest for the coming months, and Ginny Buckley will be continuing her love affair with the Dodge Viper. But our first report sees Ginny and Mike Rutherford in the Scottish Highlands, amassing a large dry cleaning bill at the launch of a new 4x4, the budget version of the well-established Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Lorado. The 4x4 market has expanded dramatically over the last 10 years. There are even a number of specialist magazines available. Not surprisingly, the market is also highly competitive. Will the new Jeep Lorado cut the mustard?
The fascination with vehicles that are as good off-road as they are on-road is spreading like wildfire. The chances are that if you actually own an off-road vehicle, it never actually gets to see much more action than the appalling potholes on your local roads. Most of them end up as executive toys or doing the home county school run. Well, today Mike and I are going to change all that. We're going to experience firsthand some of the serious action that these vehicles are capable of.
Yep, only 5% of off-road vehicles ever actually go off-road, which is a real waste for a group of vehicles that claim their inspiration from the rough and tough army vehicles of the 40s, the original Jeep.
Jeep may have manufactured the first general-purpose vehicle, but they're still a force to be reckoned with. The new Jeep Wrangler 97 version arrives in this country in right-hand drive in April. But if you don't want to wait that long, then how about this? The cute Jeep Wrangler's big brother, the Grand Cherokee Lorado. It's available now in a 2.5 litre turbo diesel and 4 litre petrol version.
And it was Chrysler's latest addition to the Jeep Grand Cherokee range that Mike and I were testing out in the wilds of Scotland. The Lorado undercuts the slightly more luxurious 4 litre Limited by almost £3,000, with both versions, the 2.5 litre turbo diesel and the 4 litre petrol, costing exactly the same, £26,500 on the road. It may be cheaper than the Limited, but the Grand Cherokee Lorado retains a high specification, managing to combine the luxury you'd expect from a top-of-the-range vehicle with the ruggedness and off-road ability you need in a four-wheel drive. So we have the vehicle and the Scottish Highlands awaited us. What I needed next was a quick lesson on the art of off-road driving. I needed Barry Stellard to be precise.
Well, Barry, I've been pointed in your direction. I'm a complete novice. I've never done an off-road course before, and apparently you are the 4x4 expert, so what do I need to do?
Take your time. Take your time. Think ahead. Like chess, you need to be 3 or 4 moves ahead of yourself all the time. Imagine you're driving on snow or ice. Use the engine, use the gearbox to hold you, leave the brakes alone, be very smooth, and keep your mind alert and on the job. Don't look at the pretty scenery.
You said one there, leave the brakes alone, but I know I'm going to get to the brow of one of those huge dips and I'm going to have this temptation to use my brake.
Well, on most hills, if you use the brakes, you will lock the wheels. If you lock the wheels, you've got no steering. You arrive at the bottom definitely shaken, and the rule normally is shiny side up, dirty side down. If you get it wrong, you arrive the other way, which you know you've got it wrong.
So you're saying I've really got to learn to put my trust in the vehicle and what it's capable of?
This is true, because you spend a lot of money on technology in a four-wheel drive. Use it. That's what it's there for. That's what you bought it. And let's be honest, there's a lot of street cred in driving a Jeep.
Of course there is. But there is a growing number of people that do want to go on courses and do want to experience the thrill of it all. What do you think the attraction of it is? Why are you so hooked?
Yeah, control really. If you can make a car go where other people don't think it can go, and you come out feeling really good the other end. It's a bit like the opposite to being a rally driver. A rally driver does it at speed, we do it very slow.
If there are people out there watching that have maybe got one of these vehicles and they think, right, okay, I'd quite like to try that, how can they go about it? Are there clubs available? What should be their first step?
Well, there are clubs for the more ardent off-roaders, so they do deal with nice shiny new 4x4s, but the best advice is to go to a good off-road driving school, have a day's lesson and just learn what the vehicle can do safely.
And with that, it was time for me to put the expert's advice into practice, with a little help, or possibly hindrance, from good old Mike.
Right, well, I've listened carefully to my quick lesson there. It's thumbs off the wheel.
Thumbs poking out, yep.
Okay, very little brake, no brake.
gentle on the brakes. Make sure you're in the right gear as well. Do you want 2-wheel high, 2-wheel low, 4-wheel high, etc.?
Oh, okay, and take it nice and slow and steady.
Yeah, but the main thing is have fun, have a laugh.
Okay, but you are going to look after me, aren't you?
A man in anorak is going to look after you, don't worry.
Oh no, I'm putting my trust in this man.
Get in there. It's
Come
a bit
on.
dirty.
Well, let's go and get muddy.
And so we joined a convoy of Jeeps, all ready to sample the Glencarkey off-road driving course. There was no doubt the Laredo handled the course just as well as the Grand Cherokee Limited would have done. So what are the differences between the two models?
Well, as you know, it doesn't cost as much for starters, and the reason for that is that there's not quite as much equipment on it. You get smaller wheels, 15-inch instead of 16-inch.
Wow,
but
you lose an inch.
You do,
Oh.
you do. But as you know, you've been driving them today off-road, and it doesn't make an awful lot of difference to the car's capability. It's inside you'll see the differences. There's no leather, there's not so much wood. The information station, as we call it, which is the glorified clock in the middle of the car, is missing. There's manually operated seats instead of electric, and just some of the little tweaks are missing, but basically it's still the same Grand Cherokee.
So how influenced were you with the introduction of this cheaper model by the Ford Explorer, which has just crossed the Atlantic? Because that got you on your heels a bit, you know, because it's the biggest selling off-road vehicle in the States, isn't it? So you worried a bit?
Chrysler Jeep are never complacent about what they do. We're very confident with our vehicles. Ford has brought out the Explorer in the UK, yes, and we've got to look and see what they're doing. But we like to think that they're following us rather than us following them.
Now, the other thing I have to ask you is, are you guys mad? Because you've unleashed a group of some of the worst behaved journalists I know in these vehicles today, and you've really given us quite a good course. Do you think that's important?
We think that if you're going to do something like this, you've got to do it properly. There's no way that journalists can really gauge a car's performance if you don't let them get out there and see what the thing can do. We've made very few changes to these cars, really just the tyres, to enable you to get some really good off-road grip up there. Otherwise, what you see here is what you get. And I hope you think that these cars are capable of some quite amazing work. We certainly do.
This is all about high technology, this is all about professional mud plugging, this is all about the usual international freeloading, and of course we're here to appraise, we technical experts, the new Laredo. And of course there's only one thing on Ginny's mind, and that's the state of her jacket.
The only technical thing I'm bothered about is the fact that my lovely warm orange jacket is absolutely covered with mud and water. And how can this be?
The reason for this
your fault.
is that we went in a bit too quickly into a, well, they described it as a puddle. It was more like a river.
It was a lake.
It was a lake.
It was a huge lake.
It was an ocean. And
Michael forced me to drive into it at an excessive speed, and he didn't tell me that you have to do what with the radiator?
well, I think the problem is...
heating system
well,
or something?
Yeah, we could have closed the heating vents down,
Right.
apparently. But I think we were going so fast, water was going to come in one way or another. And the car duly soaked us because water came through the dashboard, through the heating vents. And look at these, look, these boots, look, the old Timberlands.
But listen, Mike.
Look, filthy.
Mike, did we have fun?
It's great, mud plugging they call it, and you can't do much better mud plugging than that. That was one of the best four-wheel drive routes that I've ever done because it was wet and it was muddy. And, you know, again, it comes back to this point that other four-wheel drive manufacturers let you drive up a little gravel path and say, test our vehicles. Companies like Jeep say, well, look, take it out on a mountain in Scotland and drive it through a lake. And, you know, that to me says that they've got confidence in their products.
And even better than that, they let a first-timer like me behind the wheel of it without any stress, without any bother, and they let me put it through its paces. And I tell you what, it was absolutely excellent fun. And to say that only 5% of people that own one of these vehicles actually put it through its paces off-road, then the rest of you must be mad. You enlist for a course this weekend, you will have the best fun. And now it's time for the best bit.
Bacon butties.
In the farmhouse, and we're off. See you later.
Ta-da.
Well, the new Laredo certainly proved its worth on that rugged test track in Scotland. But as Ginny was saying, since most 4x4 owners use their cars on the road, I think the jury has to be out until we get a decent test on tarmac, and we'll be doing that in the weeks to come here on Four Wheels Good. We'll also be featuring rivals to the Laredo, including the SsangYong Musso and the new much-heralded Ford Explorer. Well, after the break, we'll move from action in the mud to action in the skies. That's got you thinking, hasn't it? Find out more when we come back. Welcome back to Four Wheels Good. Los Angeles can have some of the world's worst traffic jams, so broadcasters there find that it's important to keep viewers and listeners informed. Let's join Steve Parker in the Californian sunshine, who has a friend in very high places.
We're driving a 300 horsepower Mustang Cobra, and we've taken it down here to Long Beach, California. We are on the track where they run the Long Beach Grand Prix IndyCar race every year, right here on city streets. We thought this would be a good place to place a cell call to Jennifer York, who is the Skycam helicopter reporter for Channel 5 in Los Angeles, the same place I work, and ask her about reporting on traffic from 1,000 feet up every day to several million people. And there she is. Yes, we're lucky. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today. Jennifer, a lot of people know that the M6 motorway and the Thelwall Viaduct is a big pain when it comes to traffic. Tell us about traffic right here in Los Angeles.
Heading into downtown is one of the worst areas. The Hollywood Freeway, the Golden State, and also through Orange County, there's some real big traffic jams in one area called the Crush. That's where 3 different freeways merge, and you've got all these different people. In fact, I think there's almost 20 million cars in Southern California alone. And could you imagine all that on just, I think there's about a dozen freeways that 20 million cars have to fit on every day of the week.
Jennifer, I took a ride with you in that helicopter a few days ago. Tell us all about the helicopter. It's a very special one, isn't it?
We fly in an Aerospatiale 350B. It's a big helicopter among helicopters. I know most people think it's kind of small, but among helicopters, it's one of the biggest, and it's really quiet and it's smooth. We have a cameraman who sits behind me, and we have a pilot that pilots it while I'm reporting.
Jennifer, I'm on the front straight where they run the Long Beach Grand Prix. The Indy cars go 200 miles an hour here. I don't really go that fast, but tell us what happens when people slow down in Los Angeles because of the rain.
We find that people drive right off the freeways. They land in people's backyards. They run into the sides of buildings. People don't know that the freeways get really slick when it rains because of all the oil on the freeways, and people can't stop right away, and they end up sliding into people behind them or right off the freeways.
Jennifer was still on the racetrack. When you're up there in the racetrack in the sky with all the other helicopters from all the other TV stations, I guess you have to cooperate with the other pilots working, huh?
Well, you know, you think it's crowded on the ground, what you're driving in right now. Imagine that up in the air. Sometimes we can have up to 9 or 10 different airships over one situation, whether it be a bomb threat or a car chase. They always fly in the same direction, and it's up to the pilots to talk to the other pilots. So that's another thing. You usually know the other pilots that are flying the other airships, so that helps out a lot as well.
Now, Jennifer, you cover a lot of other stories besides just traffic. You do the fires and the floods and the earthquakes in Southern California.
I think it's a little bit harder because it seems like it's breaking news and everybody is on the edge of their seats waiting to hear what you have to say. So what you have to say is very important, and the accuracy of what you have to say is very, very important. It's not trivial whatsoever, and you've got everybody kind of listening to you. So I think it's extremely important. It's very intense. But it's crucial to keeping people informed in Los Angeles as to what's going on, because, you know, we're like media hogs here. We love to know. We always listen to the news. We don't have air conditioning in the helicopter, so it gets really hot here. Some of those days the average heat was 100 degrees outside. Then the heat from the fires, of course, really, really made it hot inside here. I think for me the hardest was the smoke, not only because it was hard to breathe, but also it made it, you felt like you're flying at night when it was, say, 11 o'clock in the morning, because it was so dark outside because of all the smoke in the air. So it was a pretty traumatic time.
Ready or not, they'll go for what you got. Ain't no good talking about it, just grab it while it's hot. Say what you want, do what you like. You could be spending your life living in the city. Better watch out, living in the city. Better watch out. Don't take liberties with me, with others waiting patiently. Always tripping over broken hearts, crying out for more. This is the place, the vogue is here. It's where you belong, living in the city.
Jennifer, it sounds like serious business, but you're in that helicopter 3 hours every day. You must have some fun up there, right?
Well, some fun things that we do is that we peek into people's backyards, and if they're really dirty and filthy, I mean, people collect a lot of junk. We'll zoom in with our Westcam, and we can get really close. I mean, we can see the colors of a baby's bottle in a backyard. We can see the color of someone's underwear hanging on a line.
Shoot them as fast as they come, but a million new voices will be found. Their heads are held high, the braver ones. It's more than a wall that must come down.
Tell us how you get such high-quality pictures from the helicopter to the home viewers.
This is what you would normally look like if I looked out my helicopter window, but the capabilities of the Westcam, it's a $300,000 camera from Canada, which is mounted on the outside of our helicopter. Martin, our cameraman, is able to zoom in with the capabilities of the Westcam, and we can actually see, but for the, is it really? You want to show it?
I understand you're on top of an accident scene right now.
Looks like it's a head-on collision here. You can see how many paramedics are on the scene. You can see the color shirt that the person is wearing who's laying on the gurney. And we're able to show you the bumper. You can see just how the front end of the car is damaged. We can see what type of injuries they're suffering. We're able to see how many lanes are blocked if it was on a freeway. This is a surface street accident, but we can even see the policewoman taking the report here. You know what, Steve? I have to go to another story right now, but thanks for calling.
Thanks for joining us.
And hey, don't take the 101, it's really heavy. Stick with the Golden State to get into downtown. Bye.
That's what you call a real high-flying job. And a story like that is a reminder that our cities have cameras everywhere these days. Here in the UK, a recent review of the Gatso speed cameras showed that a majority of motorists were in favour of them. A strange spin on the story is that many police forces who operate them don't have the funding to fully utilise them. The vast sums of money generated from speed tickets goes directly to the Treasury. Well, still to come on the programme, Will Hoy on the magic of the Morgan Plus 8, a long-term test on a Saab 900, and Stirling Moss's mystery gift to Mike Rutherford. But first a quick break, and then Ginny Buckley's continuing drive of the mean motor monster, the Dodge Viper. You're watching Four Wheels Good on the Granada Men and Motors channel. Now, if I said 8 litres or V10 to you, does your heart go all a-flutter? Well, if it does, you're in for a treat now, as Ginny Buckley reveals that the awesome Dodge Viper she was racing at the Paul Ricard circuit near Marseille last week is now available as a road car. It's time to give it some welly.
Yes, it's crossed the Atlantic and it's on sale now in the UK. The Viper GTS may have started life as a design study, but it's now very much a reality. This is one serious car that you won't forget in a hurry. The sight of one Viper is amazing, but two side by side make an awesome sight, with the GTS road car capable of giving the racing version a run for its money in the performance stakes. It has an 8-litre V10 engine. It's capable of 450 horsepower and has a top speed pushing 180 miles an hour. In a world full of restrained, classy cars, the Viper stands out like a stripper at a garden party. On paper, everything about the Viper is wrong. It's too big, it's too fast, it's too powerful, too hard to see out of. It's even too hard to get into. But when you see it, none of it actually matters, because it's just too gorgeous for words. As you can see, this isn't a car that comes with any frills. You get electric windows, airbags and a stereo, and that's really your lot. It's simplistic, stylish, and it has a really raw feel about it. And to be honest, that's the whole point of the Viper. You see, this is one car that doesn't have to try too hard. The thing is, it's got you absolutely hooked before you even get inside it. As you can imagine, the responsibility you feel when you're handed the keys to one of these for the afternoon is great. Putting the new Mondeo through its paces is one thing, but with Chrysler's Viper, it's a totally different ballgame. You don't so much drive a Viper as coax it into action and marvel at the amount of power that this engine's great torque can create. 0 to 60 in around 4.5 seconds. Although the steering on it feels fantastic and those enormous Michelins give tremendous grip, the gearbox can be quite tricky. The 6 speeds are very close together and you do need to work quite hard at it. The thing about the Viper is that there's almost a battle for control going on. What it really needs is 2 firm hands and a tremendous amount of respect. In turning the Roadster into the coupe, Chrysler have done far more than simply welded on a roof. Few of the body panels from the RT10 have made it onto the coupe. It's also significantly lighter. The target was to shed 30 kilos. They got rid of 36. The handling is now far less twitchy than the Roadster. Steering is more poised, and you need to be travelling at some alarmingly fast speeds to produce any style of tail wag. The Viper is actually far easier to drive than you would imagine, but beware of those non-ABS brakes. Hit them heavily, and the Viper lives up to its name, flicking its tail end ferociously. It's capable of reaching colossal speeds on high roads, but if you hit a damp patch on a nasty bend in a low gear, then you'd better watch out. There's a couple of things that really take quite a bit of getting used to. One is how low down on the road you're positioned in this. You're looked down upon by absolutely everybody, from truckers to people driving Fiestas. The other thing is how often you're looked at. You try pulling up at a petrol station or a shop, just driving past a group of people in one of these, and they just stop and go. It's absolutely wonderful. For the first year of its production, the Viper will only come in one colour, azure blue, gift-wrapped from head to toe by 2 sleek white stripes. They're to remind us that the Viper's inspiration was the Shelby Cobra Daytona, the World GT Championship winner of the 1960s. Everything about the Viper has a purpose. Even the coolest brake light in the world, which is there to remind us it's a Viper. The Viper is without doubt an amazing vehicle that packs an incredible punch. and so it should at £62,000. It's the car of your dreams. But when you compare it to other supercars, you realise you actually get an incredible amount of power for your pound. If this car were a man, then I'm sorry guys, but I haven't met one of you yet who's quite as powerful, sexy or cool. Saying goodbye to it is a little bit like leaving someone that you love. It makes me want to throw caution to the wind and sell my house just so that I can own one. And one thing's for sure, after a day spent with the Vipers, driving is not going to be quite the same experience ever again.
Yeah, I can't say I'd ever be surprised to see the headline, Ginny Buckley ties knot with hot sports car. Well, now then, after both Mike Rutherford and our friend Stirling Moss have been jetting around the world over the last month, we welcome them back in conversation in the living room of Stirling's luxury London home.
Well, here we are back in the new year, and it's the first chat with our old friend Stirling Moss, Grand Prix legend, one of Britain's most famous sportsmen for sure. Stirling, sorry we haven't had a chance to chat, but I've been off in Detroit and all the rest of it.
But it's the first time since Christmas.
I know. And
well, just a minute.
Oh dear, hang on.
No, well, I couldn't send this to you because I was frightened of breaking the ball.
I've got to say, this is absolutely true. I never send Stirling and Susie Moss a Christmas card. They always send me a Christmas card, and they always religiously send me a little present.
There's no good shaking it. You need to open it.
I'm not. This looks like, I don't know. It's. I wonder what it could be. Maybe
Came from Ireland.
Hang on. Happy Christmas, love Stirling and Susie. Hope it helps is the message. It might be one of those industrial packs of condoms. I'm not quite sure. All that. I'll use that next year.
Yes.
Here we go. Hang on. Let's see.
Beautifully packed, you know.
It is wonderful.
No,
Hang on.
I can do that.
It's a book.
Educational.
It's not one of those how-to. No.
Well.
In praise of the potato. Now, if you, this is a little. I'll explain in 30 seconds. My wife is. Asian, and all we ever have in our house is rice. Whatever meal you have, whether it's fish fingers and chips or egg and chips or anything else and potatoes, you don't get chips or potatoes, you get rice. We never have potatoes in our house, and dear old Stirl has borne that little story in mind. Thank you. What a lovely little book.
Not ready for you.
I'll pass that on to the missus.
That's it, exactly.
Remember, love, we don't want rice, we want taters. Anyway, that's great. Stirling, thank you. In the news this week, of course, is the old road protesters are at it again. They've been burying themselves underground on this A30 site or wherever it is down in Devon. What are your feelings about these people?
Well, I must say I can't have much sympathy, to tell you the truth, because unfortunately, whether we like it or not, progress does go on. Cars change, roads, we get bigger roads. It isn't particularly nice, but I just honestly can't see there's any good burying yourself in the road any more than going on a hunger strike in jail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth reminding people, isn't it, that first of all, let's remind everyone that motoring is not a fringe minority pastime. It is done by the great majority of us. Secondly, there are democratic processes that are gone through before they decide a road is built. So we do everything by the book, we being, the if you like, the pro-road lobby. We do everything by the book. Seems to me these scumbags come along, people who don't contribute very much to society, often are on the dole, don't have jobs.
But they're better down the hole than they are defacing things like Stonehenge, aren't they?
Well, I was going to say, I don't see a problem with just leaving them down the hole. If they want to dig themselves into the ground and protest against a road, can't we just leave them there? I mean, it seems if they die down there, God forbid, it seems to me that it's, well, I don't know, suicide? Oh, and in a good cause, suicide in a good cause.
I must be honest, Mike, I don't understand. I really don't understand it, because I can't believe that they're stupid enough to think that because they're down there, the road will never be built. Yes, it will slow it up, but what does that do but just cause a lot of aggravation?
Aren't they people, do you think? I mean, I get the feeling that even if the road programme was completely stopped and we decided, and please don't ever let this happen, that we would never have any more road expansion, no more road improvements, that these people would then find something else to complain about. I mean, I gather they're also complaining about the runway extension at Manchester Airport. Seems to me that airports are places for public transport, i.e. aeroplanes. People...
Talking about that, one thing interests me. Is there any reason, Mike, why we shouldn't have a steam assistant takeoff, rather like they do on aircraft carriers, and if one needs it, an arrestor wire to stop the things overshooting? I mean, it's nothing to do with it, because obviously they're going to go the other route. But I often wonder, because the planes are stressed, obviously, to certain G, and I just wonder why they don't, to save fuel, if you like, give them a kick up the backside, with the steam.
The other thing that always amazes me about aeroplanes is how on earth do they land those things on those tiny little tyres? It just defies logic to me. Think how important tyres are for cars. I mean, it is one of the, along with your brakes, probably the most important safety feature on your car. And yet tyres are so important on cars, and yet they have those tiny little, horrible little tyres on these bloody great jets.
Oh, but they're fairly big, you know. You go up to buy a big jet, you're talking of a tyre bigger than me.
I'd like.
Mind you, that's not very big.
I know. I didn't want to say. I'd like them bigger, actually. Actually, thinking of you, I mean, you travel an awful lot by public transport, and particularly aeroplanes. I mean, you travel to the States quite a lot. I mean, am I right in thinking, it seems to me that public transport is getting worse. There's no two ways about it. Checking in for flights these days
terrible.
is taking
but that's
a long
because
time.
it isn't a check-in, it's a supermarket, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you can get past all the stores, you then find where you've got to check in.
Yeah.
It's rather like going to Las Vegas. If you want to check in your hotel, you've got to pass all the slot machines. Well, I think it's a bit like that, actually, at the airports now.
What about the old tubes and the buses? Because you're...
I'm Holder. I do use...
You do have the bus pass?
Yes, I do, and I use the bus, I use the tubes, I use the trains. I use the trains quite a lot because I find that to go from here to Birmingham or anywhere up north like that, it's a lot easier, and I can do things while I'm on the train, which in the car you can't.
The government have been saying recently, or to be more precise, the Lib Dems through this this new traffic bill of theirs have been talking about perhaps reducing the amount that we travel, which means people like
stopping us from travelling.
Yeah, people like you and I with our cars should be using our cars less, they say. I mean, do you think it can really work that they can turn around the authorities and say to people who have paid their taxes on their cars, paid to use their cars 24 hours a day if they so wish, that they shouldn't be using those cars so much?
No, they probably can say it. I don't think it's very realistic. I would hope it isn't a very realistic thing. I do think it would be much more realistic to cut the price of some of these things. I think the prices on trains are really quite appalling now. And, you know, but having said that, I do think they're running much better than they used to.
Yeah. Cast your mind back about 10 years as well. In London, the Greater London Council, which was disbanded by the government, introduced something called the Fares Fair scheme. It was a scheme designed to get people to use the public transport system more because it would cost a lot less, and yet they were written off as loony lefties, I think, and the scheme never got off the ground. That's what we need, isn't it? We need a system whereby people are given the option of driving their cars at great expense, which is keeping the costs are pretty much the same as they are at the moment, or the alternative of using a public transport system that is dirt cheap. Surely that's the way to encourage people.
Yeah, we've got to get
like
the roads better so that it gets you there on time. That's the point.
Yeah. Okay. On the question of commuting around London, I mean, a lot of people will be, you know better than anybody because you live in central London, and people will be hearing stories all over the country about how bad the roads are in London. Can you just put them right? I mean, yeah, we have congestion, particularly in the rush hour and stuff like that, but the problem is nowhere near as bad as people make out, is it, in London these days?
It's very bad in other countries, I must say that. I've recently returned from Europe, and it was absolutely appalling at some of those places, Antwerp and so on.
Countries that spend a lot more money than we do on public transport,
I would
incidentally.
think, probably.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that Oxford Street, which is one of the filthiest, dirtiest streets in London, is a car-free zone, in effect. It's the buses and the taxis.
In theory, yes. Yeah. In theory, yeah.
What do you think are the major improvements that we could introduce in big city centres like London, Manchester, Birmingham? What would you like to see done?
I would like to see stop them from bringing these funny ways and not allowing you to do right turns when it's reasonable and those sort of things. I would like to see a group of people like cab drivers and truck drivers and motorists getting together and saying, look, we suggest this is done and that's done. Yeah,
more on committee.
Yeah.
So more from our regular guest Stirling Moss next week when we'll be talking about the imminent Grand Prix season, and I'm off to boil some spuds.
That'll be the day. Can't imagine Mike boiling spuds somehow. Anyway, after the break, features on two very different cars, the Saab 900 and the Morgan Plus 8. Join us then. Hi, welcome back. The motoring media is very privileged to be offered drives of all the latest vehicles, sometimes months before they go on sale. Our Granada TV car park is almost a tourist attraction in itself. But you only really get to know a car and discover faults that an owner might be concerned about after you've owned it for a reasonable period. Of course, the problem with long-term testing is that you've got to clean the darn thing.
Steve, we're out today in one of Watcar's long-term test cars, the Saab 900. What do you look for when you're looking for a car to test over 12 months?
Well, this is one of about 15 cars that we have on long-term test. Ideally, we'd test every single car on the market, but it's just not feasible, unfortunately. But this one's particularly interesting because it's got a Sensonic gearbox, which is something that isn't available on any other car. It's basically a manual without a clutch, or an automatic where you change gears, whichever way you look at it.
But that takes some getting used to, doesn't it?
Yeah, after a while, you're using it as second nature. But if you drive it for the first time, it does come as a little bit strange.
Yeah, I noticed on the way here, a couple of times you braked very sharply.
Well, that's right. With no clutch there, you can sort of hunt for the clutch and unfortunately hit the brake, which takes some sort of quite swift reactions to get off it fast. Otherwise, you'll end up almost banging your head on the steering wheel.
So how long have you had it now?
This one's been with us about 4 months. We got it in August last year. It's the first P registration car that we got into the office, in fact.
Okay, so it's quite enough time to formulate some opinions on it. What do you like about it? What are the plus points to it?
Well, basically, this is a very, very comfortable cruiser. It's got a 2-litre turbo engine, so there's about 185 brake horsepower underneath your right foot, so there's plenty of power. The turbocharger's there for overtaking on the motorway. It's extremely good. Very, very comfortable. The front seats are superb. Unfortunately, the chassis isn't quite up to the same standards as the engine. It feels a little bit wooden. The ride's a little bit uncomfortable, as you found on the journey on the way down here.
We did, yes.
And going around corners as well, you don't get as much feedback as you do from some other cars.
I suppose having something on a long-term test is a fantastic way to judge what it's actually like to run week in, week out, and how much it costs to run. What about this? Is it an economic buy?
Well, it costs 23,000, so it's quite an expensive car, plus the 700 odd pounds for the Sensonic gearbox, so it's quite a fair amount of money to pay out, and it's competing against cars such as the BMW 328 and the like, so it's not cheap. But what it does offer is a huge amount of space in the compact executive market in which it competes. You can't get a car that's got a hatchback for a start, for a huge amount of versatility, and a good amount of space in the back and in the front.
How much have you used a Sensonic gearbox? I mean, it's what you say, £700 extra.
Yeah.
Is it an option that's just a bit of a toy for boys that want to go out at the weekends and pretend they're racing drivers, or is it really quite useful?
Well, if you've got a left foot that wants to be lazy, then it's extremely useful. Saab says that it gives you the control of a manual box with the convenience of an automatic box. Yes, it's convenient. As for the control, don't think so quite yet, but it's something that we think will be seen on a lot more cars, so we were keen to try it as soon as we could.
So that's one of your tips for the future.
Absolutely.
Looking inside, it's a very aircraft style cabin feeling to it, hasn't it?
That's right. Well, Saab make planes as well, of course, and one of the features they brought across from the aircraft is the black panel facility on the instrument panel. If you're driving at night, you can hit the button and it'll take the lights off all the controls except for the speedo, which of course is the important one to watch. You know, the seats are very, very good. It's a comfortable car on longer journeys, particularly motorways, where you get fewer road imperfections than you do around town. But when you get off the motorway and you're driving around on country roads such as these, then yes, it can get a little uncomfortable.
How well does the car hold the road?
Going around corners, there's a fair amount of grip. There's some good meaty tyres on this model, but there's not an awful lot of feedback coming back through the steering wheel, and it's not the sort of car that you can power through corners with confidence. The other problem you've got, this turbocharged engine has a huge amount of power, about 183 brake horsepower, but it does suffer rather a lot from turbo lag. So you have to wait till about 3,000 revs before the turbo cuts in and you get most of the power through, and that can lead to quite some sort of sudden jerkiness if you're accelerating away from traffic lines.
Steve, from the outside, the Saab isn't the most inspiring of cars, but really once you get inside, it does come into its own, doesn't it?
That's right, there are a lot of good features inside. Number one, the seats are extremely comfortable. The Swedes tend to make very good seats in Volvos and in Saabs, and these are no different, very comfortable on a long journey.
So you've got a long bumpy ride, but the seats are comfortable.
That's right, yep. Yeah, you might have a bumpy ride, but your back will be in good shape when you arrive. The other good thing is, again, in Swedish fashion, everything falls to hand very, very well. The controls are clear and easy to use. You've got a good stereo set into the dash. That's a unique fit stereo, so it's no good, can't be taken out and used in any other car. And of course, as we mentioned, the black panel facility and some of the loveliest ventilation bits and pieces in here that you ever come across. They work very, very smoothly and very nicely as well.
Nice little toys, aren't they?
They are. And of course, in typical Saab fashion, in between us we've got the Sensonic gear stick, and the ignition key sits in there, which is again a security feature. You can't take the ignition key out unless you've actually got the the car set in reverse, so therefore the car is locked in reverse and can't be driven away without the key.
Safety really does feature very highly on it, doesn't it?
Again, a typical Swedish thing. Yeah, you've got twin airbags. Saab are known for the strength of their body shells, and this is no different. It feels like a solid car as well, partly because of the fairly high waist level. You've got a fairly shallow windscreen, and as I say, at the side the doors are quite high, which might be a problem if you want to put children in the back seats if they like to have a good view out. If you put a kid in the back, you might not be able to see through the window.
Well, even I was struggling on the journey here, so I think that's a good comment, really.
Absolutely.
Steve, this model's complete with the Sensonic gearbox, which at around £700 is quite a lot for an extra that could really just be a bit of a toy, couldn't it?
Well, it's a novel idea and something that we think will be coming onto more cars in the future. Changing gears as you would with a manual, but having no clutch for your left foot to play with. But personally, I quite enjoy it, because in the near future I'll be putting my left foot into retirement.
Oh, Steve.
The old Steve Fowler slipper gag, eh? If they ever bring in joystick-controlled cars like that Mercedes Concept we saw, you'll no doubt be putting the other arm in a sling. Well, from one pretty conservative vehicle to one that you'll either love or despise. The people who desire the car in our next item, however, must be pretty obsessed and wealthy, come to that. I mean, would you be willing to wait 5 years to own a £30,000 car? We're talking about the four-wheeled head-turner, the Morgan Plus 8.
How macho are you? Do you regard a Ford Probe as a bit of a challenge?
If yes, you won't like this. If no, say hello to the Morgan Plus 8, a unique combination of 1930s looks and 3.9 V8 engine. It's one mean machine. Cannot excite indifference. For various reasons, it's love or hate at first sight. Pull up at the lights and most people will give it the thumbs up for looks. Some give it the thumbs down for a price tag of £29,500 and the thought of a 5-year waiting list. It's just not in the spirit of the thing to drive with the roof up, even in very bad weather, and I can see why. It's like riding a bucking bronco through a tunnel, but at least the view down that louvered bonnet is terrific. And in good weather, you can see 60 miles an hour come up in about 6 seconds. This particular car is used by the factory to try out new features, and the prototype hood might still look untidy when it's down. They'll sort that out, but it is simplicity itself to remove when it's not actually bucketing down. Now, I personally love the overall simplicity of the interior, and the little fly-off handbrake's fun to use if you can find it. But I hate the dashboard. This threatens to be the basis of a new layout. Pay more and you can get something much flashier in wood. But with this one, you can't see the speedo and the rev counter properly, and these switches look as though they come from some home-built disaster. Morgan, please don't do it. Just listen to those 190 brake horses pulling a lightweight car like this, and we're not talking Shetland ponies, are we? Hang on tight, be ready for a hard ride and concentrate, or you'll be off sideways. If you enjoy listening to your cool jazz CDs or chatting away on the cell phone, then you'll hate every minute in here. If, on the other hand, you're prepared to focus totally on what you're doing and flatter yourself that you have a precise touch with the machinery, then you'll have to be pulled out of the saddle, as I will. This is one for Will to make fly, I think.
A Morgan is like nothing else on Earth, particularly the Plus 8 version. It's a car for Rocket Man. The first thing that strikes you about this car is the explosive acceleration. It's got massive torque, which gives excellent mid-range performance, all important for that very iffy overtaking manoeuvre. The top speed is just 125 miles an hour, not a lot, but to my mind what's more important is how it gets you there. That sort of power would be fine in a scientifically honed contemporary car, but this car's suspension with its leaf springs at the rear and sliding pillar steering at the front, mated to a steel ladder frame chassis, is totally prehistoric. It's a real seat-of-the-pants experience. The good experience comes on winding, twisty, but smooth roads, where the lack of suspension travel and body roll make it a really great drive. Seat-of-the-pants experience which comes when you show a Morgan a bump. Hits a few bumps at speed and a pilot's license could come in very handy. Add a bit of rain and things can deteriorate even further. You may think I'm knocking this car, but I'm most definitely not. It's the most rewarding and involving car to drive. Once you know how it reacts, and provided you've got good reactions, then it's just huge, huge fun. Boot it in a slow corner and you can provoke oversteer at will. Not that I suggest you try it on the open road, otherwise it's got a comforting tendency to understeer, unless that is, you're airborne. This is not a car for wimps.
OK guys, well you can stop slavering now. If you're serious about owning a Morgan Plus 8, put your name down on the 5-year waiting list and start saving the 30 grand. Well, we're out of fuel now. Join us next week when we'll be all tanked up and ready to accelerate into another edition of 4 Wheels Good. From us all here, take care, we'll see you next time.